Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learn English Easy. What were you doing? Let me guess.
Go on.
You were reading a PDF about economic volatility models.
I mean, guilty as charged. Actually, it was a paper titled Forecasting Binary Economic Events in Modern Mercantilism.
Oh my God!
But hey, before you roll your eyes and tune out, it basically explains why we almost had a trade war over an island made of ice yesterday.
See? This is why we keep you around. You find the code in the matrix while the rest of us are, just looking at the woman in the red dress.
Happy to help. Greenland is rich in rare earth minerals.
Which are essential for batteries, electric vehicles.
High-tech defense systems, all of it. Plus, as the ice melts, you get new shipping lanes opening up. It's a geopolitical goldmine. But the way it was demanded, that was the shock. It wasn't a diplomatic cable, it was an ultimatum.
And there was a trigger for this, right? It wasn't just a random Tuesday thought.
Yes. It seems to have been sparked by Operation Arctic Endurance, which was a NATO exercise taking place in Greenland. The administration seemingly took that military presence as a signal to escalate the ownership claim. Essentially saying, if our troops are training there, why isn't it ours?
And the Europeans did not take this well.
Putting it mildly.
Yeah.
The European Parliament formally suspended the ratification of the trade deal. Bernd Lange, who's the head of the Trade Committee, went on record calling it blackmail.
He used that word, blackmail.
He literally said there's no possibility for compromise while these threats are on the table.
And that's when Ursula turned the plane around.
Yes. She was en route to Davos because anyone is in Davos right now for the World Economic Forum. But she pulled a U-turn and went back to Brussels for an emergency summit at 7 p.m. last night.
Wow.
But here is where it gets really fascinating and, frankly, a little scary. The EU started talking about their nuclear option.
Okay, please tell me you mean nuclear in the economic sense. I did not have actual nuclear war on my 2026 bingo card.
Yes. Strictly economic. It's called the anti-coercion instrument.
Okay, I've seen this phrase floating around the financial blogs, but break it down for me. What does an anti-coercion instrument actually do? Is it just like a strongly worded letter?
Far from it. Think of it as an economic kill switch.
A kill switch.
It's a tool the EU designed originally to stop China from bullying individual member states, like Lithuania. It allows the EU to restrict access to their single market for specific foreign businesses if the country they belong to is trying to coerce the EU politically.
And it's never been used before.
Never. But The Guardian reported they were considering activating it against the U.S.
So we're not just talking about putting a tax on Kentucky bourbon or Harley Davidsons here.
No, we're talking way bigger. They were threatening to block U.S. tech and crypto companies.
Wait. Pause. Let me make sure I understand this. They were going to block Netflix?
Potentially, yes.
In Europe.
Apple, Netflix, crypto platforms. The Guardian explicitly mentioned that European consumers might balk at losing Netflix over a trade dispute, but it just shows how high the stakes were.
That's incredible.
They were willing to target the cultural and technological exports that Americans absolutely dominate.
That is wild. I mean, can you imagine being a teenager in Paris? You open your laptop to watch the new season of Stranger Things, and you get a blue screen that says, "Sorry, your president tried to buy an island."
Right.
It really drives home that trade wars aren't abstract.
Exactly. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's access to services we all take for granted. It's your cloud storage, your entertainment, your phone's operating system. It was a threat to sever the digital connective tissue between the continents.
Speaking of how this felt on the ground, I did a deep dive of my own into the online sentiment.
Oh, yeah?
I took a scroll through Reddit, specifically the Europe subreddit, to see what the actual citizens were saying while their leaders were threatening to cancel Netflix. And man, the vibe wasn't just angry, it was heavy.
I can imagine. Online sentiment analysis is actually a huge part of understanding modern conflicts, which, believe it or not, we'll get to in a minute. What stood out to you?
There was this one comment from a user named EducationalHawk7484. They just sounded exhausted. They wrote, "Stop making this our problem to fix. We know your president is mad, bored, and senile. We are just waiting for him to leave office, whatever form that takes."
That is a very specific type of fatigue. It's not just political opposition. It's a sense of resignation, like they're just waiting out a natural disaster.
Exactly. And then there was Silly Mustache from Greece. Great username, by the way, who brought up the PIGS acronym. Do you remember that from the 2008 crisis?
Oh, I do. Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, the economies that were hit hardest during the Eurozone debt crisis. It was a pretty derogatory term at the time.
Right. Well, this user was channeling that old pain. They basically said, we are suffering economically and politically because of your meddling. They even referenced the 1967 CIA coup in Greece.
Wow.
So it wasn't just about Greenland, it was about decades of history bubbling to the surface.
That connects so well to what I was seeing in the research. When you push these attention buttons, like demanding Greenland, you aren't just negotiating a deal. You are waking up historical ghosts. You are triggering these deep-seated resentments that have been dormant for years.
And that emotion, that volatility on Reddit actually segues perfectly into that academic paper you were reading. Because you mentioned earlier that this chaos might not be accidental, that it's part of some kind of system.
I did. So the paper is from IELTS. It's titled Forecasting Binary Economic Events in Modern Mercantilism.
Yep.
And the core argument is fascinating. It says we have moved away from a rational economy.
Where decisions are made based on what maximizes profit or efficiency.
Right. And we've moved into an attention economy.
Okay, we hear attention economy all the time regarding TikTok or Instagram, the idea that our eyeballs are the product.
Right.
But they're applying this to geopolitics.
Precisely. The authors argue that political discourse is now driven by unconventional, emotionally resonant ideas like, say, buying Greenland. Not because it's good policy, but because it grabs attention. In this model, attention is the currency.
So Trump tweeting about Greenland isn't necessarily about a real estate strategy. It's about spiking the engagement metrics.
The paper suggests that these loud events are used to disrupt markets, focus global attention. They use a methodology called semantic news analysis.
Okay, that sounds like buzzword soup. Break that down for us. What is semantic news analysis?
It's actually pretty clever. They use something called SBERT vectors. So imagine a computer that doesn't just match keywords, but it understands the context and the vibe of a sentence.
So the AI can read the room.
The AI reads the room, exactly. It understands that Greenland, in this context, isn't about ice, it's about sovereignty and conflict.
Okay.
And then they run that through something called principal component analysis, or PCA.
You're losing me at PCA? Is that like a tax force?
Laughing.
Yeah.
No. Think of PCA as a compression tool. It takes this massive cloud of noisy data, millions of articles, tweets, sentiment scores, and it flattens it down to the most important trends. It finds the signal in the noise.
Ah.
And by doing this, they can predict binary events.
Binary events being a yes or no question.
Yes. Will it happen or will it not? They analyze how much attention the narrative is generating to predict the outcome. If the attention vector is strong enough, the event becomes more likely, or at least the market prices it in as if it's likely.
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
In a way. One of the examples they track in the paper is a prediction market bet. The U.S. government experiences a technical default between 2025 and 2030.
A national default.
Bankruptcy.
Right. But the model treats national bankruptcy not as a tragedy, but as a binary outcome to be bet on. It's all gamified. The chaos itself drives the betting markets. That is incredibly dystopian. It makes me wonder if the Reddit users are just exhausted and the algorithms are feeding on the chaos to make predictions. What are the people with real money doing? The ones who can actually afford to buy Greenland?
The millionaires.
The millionaires. Because usually we assume the rich love a business-friendly, deregulated environment. But volatility is bad for business, right? You want to know what your tax rate will be next year, not if your country is going to buy a glacier.
Well, we have some really interesting data from Common Dreams and Investopedia on this. And it turns out the wealthy are not exactly thrilled with this attention economy either.
Really?
Yeah.
I just assumed they were the ones profiting from the swings, buy low, sell high, that sort of thing.
Some might be, sure. But the overall sentiment is shifting. There was a poll by Patriotic Millionaires, which surveyed almost 4,000 millionaires globally, and it found that 77% of them believe extreme wealth allows the uber-rich to buy political influence.
I mean, tell us something we don't know that feels a bit like stating the sky is blue.
Right. But here's the kicker. 62% of them believe that extreme wealth is a threat to democracy.
Oh.
These are the people with the wealth saying, hey, this is dangerous. They recognize that when politics becomes a game of who can grab the most attention, stability evaporates. They're essentially saying the system that made us rich is now threatening the stability we need to stay rich.
That is a plot twist. The calls are coming from inside the house. Exactly.
So are they doing anything about it, or are they just filling out surveys?
They are moving. They are voting with their feet. Investopedia and Forbes are reporting a trend of the ultra-rich flocking away from the U.S.
Where are they going? Mars, New Zealand bunkers.
Not quite Mars yet, but Forbes specifically mentions Canada, England, and Ireland as top destinations.
Ireland? For the weather.
For the stability. and the English language. They are citing the political instability in the U.S., specifically with the current administration, as a reason to diversify their location. They want boring. They want rule of law. They don't want their assets tied to a country that might default because an algorithm said it would be viral.
You've got it. That's the core of it.
So, let me get this straight. The Reddit users are angry, the algorithms are predicting chaos, and the millionaires are packing their bags for Dublin. It really felt like the wheels were coming off the bus yesterday.
Yeah.
It felt like we were heading for a cliff.
It did. It really felt like a breaking point until this morning.
Right. And this is where we get to the resolution segment of our deep dive. Because if you haven't checked your phone in the last few hours, you might still be bracing for that trade war. You might be downloading your Netflix queue just in case. But, surprise.
Breaking news from Forbes, dated today, Wednesday, January 21st, 2026.
Hit us with the headline.
Trump says agreement reached on Greenland cancels new tariffs on Europe.
Just like that. Poof.
Just like that. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped nearly 600 points on the news. Apparently, Trump met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at Davos. They shook hands, and the crisis is paused.
It's giving me whiplash. We went from blocking Netflix and 10% tariffs to Dow up 600 points in, 48 hours? It feels like the writers of this season of Earth are just throwing darts at a board.
But think about it. This validates the academic paper, doesn't it? The attention economy.
How so?
We had a massive spike in attention. We had a huge emotional reaction. We had market volatility, which I'm sure some algorithmic traders made a fortune on. And then resolution. The cycle completes, and we move to the next thing.
And there's always a next thing. In the same Forbes news dump, we saw headlines that J.D. Vance and his wife Usha are expecting a baby boy in July.
And Taylor Swift was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Which, let's be honest, probably generated more positive attention metrics than the trade deal. It's like the news cycle is designed to balance terror with dopamine. 1 minute it's trade war, the next it's baby announcement.
That's exactly how the model works. It needs constant stimulation. But it wasn't all fluffy news, was it? I noticed a much darker story barred under the stock market rally and the celebrity announcements.
You mean the report about the ICE detention center?
Yeah. This was a tough read. A Cuban migrant, 55 years old, died in custody. The authorities initially claimed it was suicide.
But the autopsy ruled it a homicide.
Right. Witnesses say he was pinned and choked by guards.
It is such a sobering counterweight to the whole stocks are up narrative. While the macro-level crisis over Greenland gets resolved with a handshake at Davos, the micro-level realities, like what's happening in detention centers, often get buried.
They get buried because they don't generate the same kind of market-moving attention.
It really highlights what that paper was talking about, with discrete events. Binary outcomes like trade war, yes-no, are easy for an algorithm to process and bet on. But human suffering, systemic abuse.
That's harder to put into a vector. It doesn't have a clear resolution date for the prediction markets.
That's a chilling thought. The algorithm has a blind spot for humanity. It sees the tariff, but it doesn't see the person. So what does this all mean for us, for the listener trying to figure out if they should be worried or relieved?
Well, the immediate crisis is averted. Your Netflix subscription is ceased from the European Commission, and the tariffs are off. For now.
But the underlying dynamic hasn't changed.
Not at all. We are living in a world where policy is increasingly used as a tool for attention capture.
It's like we're all passengers on a plane being flown by a pilot who likes to do barrel rolls just to see if the passengers scream.
And the screaming helps his engagement numbers.
Exactly. That is a terrifyingly accurate analogy. And as long as the market rewards the barrel rolls, the pilot is going to keep doing them. The volatility is the point.
The volatility is the point.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. We unpacked the Greenland bluff, the European rebellion and their kill switch, the anxiety of the millionaires fleeing to Ireland, and the cold logic of the algorithms that predict it all. Before we sign off, I want to leave the listeners with something to chew on. You usually have a good final thought.
I do. I want to go back to that paper one last time.
Yeah.
It talks about how unconventional ideas gain traction due to their attention-grabbing potential.
Right. The crazier the idea, the more we click and the more the algorithm pushes it.
Exactly. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If our political reality is being shaped by what gets the most clicks, views, or stock market volatility, are we actually citizens participating in a democracy?
Oof.
Or are we just data points in a volatility model, providing the sentiment that the algorithms feed on?
That is heavy. Are we the voters or are we the content?
That's the question.
Well, on that existential note, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for listening to the deep dive. We hope you feel a little smarter or at least a little more prepared for whatever the headlines throw at us tomorrow.
Stay curious, and maybe read a footnote or two.
See you in the next deep dive.